The little girl sat alone on thick concrete steps outside the Corproto Tower, shoes dusty, her tiny hands trembling as she held back tears. The security guard had ignored her. Thepasaurs by had rushed past, but a tired single dad with calloused hands, carrying nothing but a brown paper bag and Hisson's broken toy, stopped. He knelt beside her, tore his sandwich in half, and said, "You look like you cold-deuced this more than me." He didn't know the woman standing behind him in the sunglasses was her mother and the CEO of the very building he was cleaning that morning. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Mike Carson never expected much from life anymore. His day started at 4 a.m. with black coffee and ended past midnight when his 7-year-old son, Dylan Finley, stopped coughing long enough to sleep. A former mechanic turned janitor, Mike lived paycheck to paycheck in a noisy apartment next to the highway, counting coins and cutting coupons. That morning he was rushing down Thessaly Block in his dusty blue uniform, carrying a paper bag with one sandwich inside his lunch. But just as he approached the towering glass building where he worked, he noticed a girl, alone around 6 or 7, curled up on the stone steps like she was trying to disappear. Her dress was expensive, but her face was stir with tears. Something about the way she was hugging her little knees reminded him to moochef Dylan back. "When the fever wouldn't break, hey?" he said softly, squatting down beside her. "You okay, sweetheart?" She looked up with startled red. Remedies didn't speak, just stared. Mike hesitated. He could get fired for being late again. But instead of rushing inside, he opened the crumpled paper bag and pulled out a slightly squashed sandwich. "It's turkey and cheese," he said, holding it out. "Not much, but it's fresh." Her lips quivered. Then she took it. From behind them, a black SUV slammed. He barely noticed the click-off wheels approaching. "Alina," a voice said, firm, commanding. "What are you doing?" Sunglasses hiding half her face, but not the shock tightening her jaw, Az stared at her daughter, eating a stranger's sandwich. I just found her," Mike began, standing quickly, suddenly self-conscious of his stand-in form. "I was worried." She looked, but she held up a hand and took off her sunglasses. Her eyes softened when she looked at her daughter, then narrowed as they flickered back to Mike. "You're Eth Klena from the 17th floor. Arenatu," she said. Her voice was even, to even dot. "Yes, my single quotes am." She looked at the sandwich, then at him. Alina whispered, "He was nice, Mommy." The woman stared at Mike for a beat longer, then said, "Thank you." Most people walk right past. She, Turnetto, her assistant, have the driver bring the car around now. Then looking back at Mike, she added, "You should probably come with us." Mike blinked. "Ma'am, you're not in trouble," she said, "but I think we need to talk." And just like that, Mike found himself climbing into the back of a black SUV with the daughter of the richest woman in the city. He didn't know it yet, but everything Hethwad he knew about his life was about to flip upside down. Mike sat stiffly in the black leather seat, completely out of place. The scent of jasmine and luxury leather filled the SUV, along with the silence so sharp it could cut. Alina sat beside him, still nibbling Thellest corner of the sandwich. She looked calm now, safe even. Her mother, however, hadn't spoken a word since they pulled off. Mike cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I really didn't mean to overstep. You didn't overstep," she interrupted, her voice quiet, boot and wavering. "You did what most people would never bother to do." She turned to him this time, really looking. Claire Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore, Techend, Elena's mother. Her words worry-polished, professional. "My daughter ran off after an argument with her nanny. Security couldn't find her, and yet somehow a stranger with AMOP and a sandwich did." Mike looked down, wasn't trying to be a hero, just saw a little girl alone, and figured she needed a bite in a minute. Claire tilted her head slightly. "That was your lunch, wasn't it?" He shrugged. "Yeah, but kids come first." Alina suddenly whispered, "You're a nice daddy." Claire's jaw twitched, her eyes flicked to her daughter, then back to Mike. "You're a single parent?" "Yeah, my boy's name is Dylan, 7, asthma. Loves dinosaurs and peanut butter, hates math." Mike chuckled softly, eyes brief lighting up. "Rough couple years, lost my wife to a drunk driver. Took whatever jeb I could after." Claire's lips parted slightly, not in pity, in realization. I want to offer you something, she said. Mike's eyes snapped. Back up. Sorry, you saved my daughter. Not just physically, you showed her kindness when she was scared. That's not nothing. Irun, a company of over 12,000 people, Andy, can't name more than 5 who would have done what you did. He blinked. Ma'am, I appreciate that, but I didn't do it expecting anything. She nodded, and that's exactly why I'm offering it. They stopped in front of a glass tower. Whitmore Tech HQ. Claire turned to him. Come inside. There's someone I want you to meet. He hesitated. I'm still on the clock technically. She smiled for the first time. A rare Apollic curve of the lips. I think I can make a call. Mike stepped out of the SU van, stared up at the building he Unlever entered through the side door with a mop in hand. Now he was being escorted through the front, past receptionist who suddenly sat up straighter, and guards who gave puzzled looks. Inside, Claire led him into a bright conference room. Alina skipped beside them, holding onto his pinky like Hugh was already. Family. Claire nodded to a waiting man. This is James, my head of operations. James raised an eyebrow at Mike. Ureth janitor from facilities. Mike gave a slow nod. That's me. Claire turned to James. He's also going to be assigned a provisional consulting position for internal culture development. Mike choked. I'm sorry, what? James blinked. You're hiring him as a consultant. I'm not hiring him, Claire said flatly. I'm investing in a human being who reminded my daughter that kindness still exists. He'll shadow various departments, learn, observe, provide insight from the ground up. Starting salary, $65,000. Health coverage include for both him and his son. Silence. James looked stunned. Mike was speechless. Alina beamed. Claire finalized and, don't worry, but stunned disbelief. I don't know what to say. Claire smiled faintly again. You already said enough when you gave my daughter your lunch. Mike had never stepped foot in an office elevator that didn't reek of bleach and floor wax. But now he stood inside one clean Cutin borrowed slacks and a pressed white shirt. Claire's assistant had rushed Topper Chase after taking his measurements. He stared at his reflection in the mirror like doors. He barely recognized himself. Just yesterday, he was wiping grime of urinals and saving quarters for Dylan Sinhaller refills. Now he was riding up to the 23rd floor to shadow the marketing team of Whitmore Tech as internal culture consultant. Whatever that meant, James the Coup wasn't subtle. With hissy glances, I still don't get this, James muttered, scrolling through his tablet. Claire never makes emotional decisions. She once fired a senior exec for noticing the Oxford comma. Mike shrugged. Believe me, I'm more surprised than you are. When the doors opened, the marketing team's heads turned toward him. In crisp shirts, tight dresses, MacBooks open, Letitia sipped, they stared like they were expecting aguist speaker from a rival firm. Not a janitor turned consultant, with scuffed boots and a folder of handwritten notes. A woman with a pixie cut stood and extended her hand. Hi, I'm Bella, creative director. You must be Mike Carson, he said. Nice to meet you. James cleared his throat. Be observing. Don't let it change your process. But it did. Mike sat quietly in meetings, listening, watching to keynotes, not on branding strategies or in judgment metrics, but on people. How the intern was always cut off. How Bella paused every time. Someone questioned her campaign title. How 3 designers shared one fried brain between them trying to finish a project with impossible deadlines. During lunch, someone mentioned Claire in hushed tones. She's tough, man. Doesn't let anyone slip, one said. Unless you're this guy, another. Mumbled. Mike didn't respond. He quietly opened his lunch bag. This time it had 2 sandwiches, one for him, one for the girl. What changed everything? He spent a week observing every department Claire assigned. Human resources, accounting, legal facilities, and every day he saw it more clearly. Whitmore Tech looked shiny on the outside, but was slowly crashing inside. Morale was low. Good people were overlooked. In Claire, she was respected, but feared. Then Friday came. Claire called him to her office. Not the assistant, not James. Claire herself had stepped inside. She stood at the window, arms crossed. Well, she asked, not earning. He cleared his throat. Your company's smart, fast, but scared. People walk on eggshells. Not because they hate the work, but because they're afraid one wrong move means they're out. They're not loyal. They're surviving. Claire slowly turned to face him. Her face was unreadable. Continued, "You've built something powerful, Miss Whitmore, but people don't love power. They love purpose, and you've got people begging to matter." For a long moment, Claire said nothing. Then she walked to her desk, picked up a manila folder, and handed it to him. Inside was a permanent contract, same position, increased salary, full benefits. For Dylan, training opportunists, and a handwritten note. "Kindness isn't weakness." "Thank you for reminding me, Claire." Mike looked up. Claire said softly, "You gave me daughter half a sandwich. I'm trying to give your son a better future." Justin, a knock. Alina peeked in holding a crayon drawing. Mike, her, and Dylan own a park bench. Claire smiled faintly. "She's drawn you 3 times this week." Mike blinked back something hot. Behind his eyes, maybe life was finally turning a page. But what none of them knew was that Sumayan downstairs had seen. It all Andy didn't like what was happening one bit. Not at all. The whisper started slow, harmless, like cracks in the wall. Why him? Just because he gave a kid, and which does Claire know what she's doing? It was James who fanned those whisper flames. He had spent 15 years building his empire under Clarice Lyd's ship, crafting numbers, securing boardroom loyalty, making himself essential. But now, some janitor was walking into meetings with the CEO, sitting across from senior VPs that actually got implemented. Claire trusted Mike in it, and that made James feel dangerous. He called a closed-door meeting Latifat, Friday evening. Only a attended people he knew would nod and not ask too many questions. "I have reason to believe Mr. Carson isn't who he claims to be," James said, tapping the conference table. "There are gaps in his work history. No degree, no formal leadership training. Yet he's whispering in Claire's ear like Aka founder." Someone asked, "Are you saying Zabaj?" James leaned in. "I'm saying we don't truly know who he is, and until we do, we need to dig downstairs." Mike was in the maintenance lounge, replacing Dylan's inhaler canister and laughing softly at a voicemail his son had left. "Dad, I'm a Dia dinosaur out of Legos with 25 pieces. 25. I miss you." Did the CEO lady say Hidade his chest ocked with love? Back upstairs, James hit send on an email to a private investigator. Subject line, "Find everything on Mike Carson." A one-tert. The following Monday, Mike arrived. He had spent the weekend organizing a surprise project, a shared lunch hour called Table Talks, encouraging employees from different departments to eat and share some thinkin' with someone they'd never spakento. By noon, the lunchroom buzzed with and stories. The intern from HERSAT with the CFO's assistant. 2 product designers were swapping parenting tips. And in a quiet corner, Claire sat with a junior accountant and said words no one had ever heard her say. "You're doing a great job." People smiled. They didn't just like the new culture. Some felt alive again. Mike stayed in the back sipping burnt coffee and watching. Then James stormed in. "Mike," he said loudly, holding up a file, "we need to talk now." Claire turned sharply, her hair scraping back. "James, not now." But James ignored her. "I ran a background check. You failed to disclose several job losses, a DUI from a decade ago, and that you dropped out of community college." Silence swallowed the room. MikeStoodStill.com. He didn't flinch, but his knuckles went white around the coffee cup. "It disclosed everything required by HR. Mike replied evenly. "The DUI weighs expugned." "I never lied." James smirked. "But you didn't volunteer that info either, did you?" Claire stood. "James, office now," but Mike lifted a hand. "No, it's fine," he said softly. "Let him finish," James barked. "You don't belong here. You're a glorified janitor playing executive resup. Enough." Claire snapped. But James had already gone too far. Alina had walked into the lunchroom and heard every word. She dropped the little note she was holding for Mike. Mike bent down, picked it. Up it read in shaky handwriting, "You're my hero, Mr. Mike. I drew you saving my sandwich from a dragon. Love, Alina." He looked up, eyes burning, but not with shame, with something colder, determined. "This isn't about me," Mike said quietly. "It's about a company that thinks man's past defines their worth. I'm not ashamed of what I've been through. You only try to dig up someone's past when you're afraid of their future," people murmured, soft at first, then louder. Claire walked up beside Mike. James, "You're suspended pending review," she said flatly. "You've forgotten something vital about this company. People don't need perfect resumes. They need purpose," James sputtered. "We're running everything for Somione, who made my daughter feel safe. One of the people I paid to do that failed," Claire cut in. "Now get out." A security escorted James from the floor. The team turned toward Mike, not just in respect, in trust. But James wasn't done, and neither was the storm he waited out to unleash.